All right. So with all of those kind of conceptual questions kind of in our framework, I want to now dive into some definitional work, and then I also want to kind of explore a little bit more into the realms of thinking as it relates to, why do we seek out horror films, right? And why, and this is again kind of one of these questions that I think is really fascinating, why is it the case that some movies are scarier than others? Is it because of plausibility? Is it because of outlandishness? How many of you felt frightened during Arrival? Right? Again, like it's not a horror film by any means, but it's definitely, because it is sci-fi, because it is the unknown, there is a bit of anxiety inducing perhaps viewership, right? So to what degree, right? And I should say out of the gates here, I'm not a horror film connoisseur. It is not a genre that I particularly seek out. It is not a genre that I particularly enjoy. It can be fun for the thrills, but it's not one where I'm just like, you know what I want to watch tonight? I want to watch a really good horror film. It's not usually the route that I go. Okay? But for some, it really absolutely is. Okay? And we'll get more to that in one of the next videos. Okay? But for this one, I want to just, again, kind of lay some foundation as it relates to definitional work, as it relates to be able to like bounce off this here. Okay? All right, so the nature of fear. Okay? So fear is defined as an unpleasant, as an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Okay? And that's as a noun. Okay? An unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Okay? And again, there's probably various ways of thinking about this. It doesn't say what kind of danger, it doesn't say what kind of pain, it doesn't say what kind of harm. So it very well could be the case that, all of that could be physical danger, physical pain, physical harm, or it could be emotional, right? It could be emotional danger, it could be emotional pain, it could be emotional harm, right? When we think about that which is, again, a kind of a threat to us, right? And that's one of the words here, is a threat of danger, pain, or harm, right? This fight or flight mode. Do we go into, again, kind of like protection? Do we go into, defense? Or do we just kind of like, cower back and let it, happen, right? So an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. A subsequent definition here, a feeling of anxiety concerning of an outcome or the safety of something or someone. So let me read that again. A feeling of anxiety concerning the outcome of something or the safety of someone. Okay? So again, this focus on anxiety, this focus on concern. And so we see this again represented in films all the time where, you don't know if somebody's going to make it through. You don't know if somebody's going to, if there's an evil spirit or if there's a ghost or if there's something going on, right? Who's going to prevail? What's going to prevail? How is the main characters going to prevail, right? Okay? So again, this idea of like a feeling of anxiety concerning the outcome of something or the safety of someone. Okay? Another subsequent definition here of fear is, sorry, there's like a kid screaming outside, but I don't think it's because they're scared. Well, maybe it is because they're scared, but maybe it's also because they're being chased around the playground. I don't know. It means there's like a little playground over there by the admin. Anyway, one of the definitions here of fear, the likelihood of something unwelcome happening, right? And so again, this idea here that ultimately, like, the likelihood of something unwelcoming happening where, something that's outside of our control, something that's outside of our ability to, navigate confidently, okay? And then the third supplemental definition here is a mixed feeling of dread or reverence, okay? And one of the kind of like points of emphasis on this definition is that phrase like for the fear, or pardon me, for the love and the fear of God, right? So, they put the love of God, they put the fear of fire and brimstone, yada, yada, yada. So this idea that, like, there's something of being, like, revered and being fearful of. And I do think, just to return and make kind of connection points here, maybe we see that a little bit in Arrival, where there's kind of like a reverence to the alien species, right, to Abbott and Costello, where there is like, there is like kind of a reverence there, and they are scared of these species because they don't know what they're capable of. They're talking all this time about a weapon, right? And so there is kind of this move that maybe these beings are something to be feared, but they're feared in kind of this reverential sense. Okay? All right. And so those are the three definitions, just kind of like worth having, on our radar. Now, other kind of areas worthy of like examination here is like the idea of like the verb. Like, what does it mean to be frightened? Like, not just to experience fear, all of those definitions that I had previous, but like to actually feel frightened, right? Where you kind of like are a little bit more on guard, the hair on the back of your neck stands up a little bit, you're kind of like heightened, etc., etc., etc. And so the definitions of frightened here are as a verb, make someone afraid or anxious, okay? So someone afraid or anxious, and deter someone or something from involvement of an action by making them afraid, okay? So I might frighten you, if I kept saying like the midterm is going to be so hard, so hard, so hard, so hard, maybe in a way like I'm deterring you from feeling capable to take the midterm. That's pretty messed up, and I didn't do that, right? But the idea that sometimes when we frighten others, we're deterring them from involvement of action by making them afraid to even participate, for them even to consider. Okay? And then some other words just to think about of like being associated with fear, right? Frightened, scared, anxiety, anxious, nervous, emotion, reverence, terror, alarm, panic, trepidation, dread, dismay, and possibly many more, right? And so we've got so many words and we've got so many concepts to convey this overall feeling, this overall experience, right? And so what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that require of us and from us? Okay? Especially as we try to navigate our worlds fairly successfully. Like, it could very well be the case that maybe, right, like you are a very fearful person, right? And so how does that affect how you live your daily life, right? And I mean, it absolutely does. If one is a very fearful person about so many various things, that's going to absolutely impact the way that you make certain decisions in your life, right? So thinking about that and thinking about, the way that fear really does play such a heavy role in our lives. It's funny, as I'm making this video right now, they're doing some work out in front of the admin. There's a big bulldozer and a big, big bulldozer moving gravel and dirt around. And sometimes the way that it moves, or if it like drops its bucket, right, its main scooper, if it drops its bucket on the ground, the earth kind of rattles a little bit. And so, I kind of feel that jolt a little bit while I'm making this video. And so should it be the case that, I'm scared? Should it be the case that, I should worry about my safety insofar as, what if that, okay, I'm just rolling here because why the heck not, okay? Let's say I'm in here, I'm making this video, and I know that that's going on out there, okay? So maybe I should be a little bit more cautious of being in my office today, right? But I am putting a lot of trust in, one, the foundational, the foundation capacities of the admin building. That's kind of one thing I'm putting trust in. The other thing I'm putting trust in is that the operator of those bulldozers out there, of that giant machinery, knows what they're doing. Right? I've never met them. I don't know their training. I don't know their history. Maybe this is their second week on the job. What if, right, one of those bulldozer operators, sneezes violently, sneezes intensely, right, jerks the levers, the bulldozer swings around, hits the side of the admin, damaging the structural integrity of the whole building. The whole building falls over. Right? The whole building kind of collapses. I'm on the side that it would bang into. Therefore, right, I perish in a terrible, terrible accident. Maybe you can hear it operating out there. But I'm putting trust, and I'm putting trust in the fact that that won't happen. Right? But if I wanted to, I could go through the mental steps. Or ultimately, I packed up really quick. I left the building because I needed to get into a more safe environment, to not be so scared. Right? So to what level, and I guess that's kind of one of the takeaways here, is what level and to what degree do we allow that outside of us to encourage or to influence what we are afraid of, right? So I'll kind of leave you with that. I know it's a silly anecdote, but I think that it works pretty well here, right? All right, so next video on Thursday, we'll talk more specifically about genres of film. We'll talk more, not genres of film, but the way film depicts fear, the way the film kind of plays with our fears. And then we'll kind of dive in to the films. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Have a great Tuesday, everyone.